You're watching The Legal Breakdown. Glenn, all eyes right now are on Elon Musk's DOGE team that is trying to gain access to the Treasury system in this country. That issue has gone before a judge in New York. That's Judge Jeanette Vargas, who just issued a ruling on this question. Can you explain what just happened?
Yeah, it looks like the federal judiciary is holding strong for the most part and is trying to apply the law to prevent Elon Musk and his little group of DOGE boys from compromising things like U.S. Treasury information, which will include payment information. It will include what we call in government our PII, our personal identifying information. You know, our salaries, our social security numbers, our other identifying information that could easily be exploited to the people's disadvantage if it got into the wrong hands. So what Judge Vargas has done is she issued an order extending basically a stop. So she is telling Elon Musk and his team that they are not permitted to access Treasury information that I was just describing, and that temporary restraining order will remain in place while litigation in this case continues. It's litigation, Brian, that was brought by 19 states, including the state of New York, where this case is being litigated. What I want our viewers to really take away from this, because we're always looking for points of light amidst the Trump-induced darkness, is state governors, state attorneys general are stepping up, are bringing suits in court to try to hold back the tide of what feels like Trump illegality, overreach, abuse of governmental power that he seems to be deploying in part through Elon Musk. I mean, who in the world could have predicted this is where we would be? A guy like Elon Musk rummaging through our personal data inside, tightly secured and controlled governmental agencies. But the good news is we have federal court judges like Judge Vargas, who is using the rule of law appropriately to put a stop, even if only a temporary stop, to Musk while this case continues to be litigated through the courts.
Glenn, do you have faith that they don't already have access to this kind of stuff? I mean, this is really just relying on the good faith of Elon Musk and the team at DOGE. And we've seen how willing Elon is to lie already. I mean, he's done it hundreds of times based on what he's tweeted out on Twitter. And so how do we know that these TROs, given the fact that we don't even have inspectors general anymore, that these TROs are actually enforcing the thing that they're seeking to enforce?
We don't. And look, we've already seen in the context of another suit brought against the Trump administration, this one involving that sort of broad freeze on all federal funds that had already been allocated and were supposed to go out to the states. There was a judge who issued a TRO, or a preliminary injunction, saying, no, stop. You have to reinstitute this money. It has to go out to the states just as Congress intended. And the Trump administration says, we got you, Judge. We're taking care of that. And what happened? The parties had to march back into court, not long after the original TRO was put in place by the federal judge. Why? Because the Trump administration wasn't complying with the court order to unfreeze the money in those programs. So do I have faith and confidence that Elon Musk and his frat boys are, really complying with every term of every injunction or temporary restraining order? Not even close.
Glenn, what is the recourse if there is misuse of PII? Let's say they want to attack some prominent Democrat. Let's say they want to attack you, and they say, you know what we're going to do? We're going to leak Glenn's tax returns publicly. What recourse do you have when really the damage has been done and there's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube?
The recourse rings hollow because, yes, I might be able to bring a lawsuit to vindicate my rights once they have been violated. But, I don't want to go hyperbolic here. And as an old, homicide prosecutor, I often use murder as a vehicle for an analogy. It's kind of like saying, oh, well, wait a minute, your loved one was murdered. Well, don't worry, because we can now indict that person, try that person, and maybe hold that person accountable for murdering your loved one. How much of a remedy does that feel like to a family who lost a loved one to violent crime? Again, I don't want to, misuse that because murder is the mother of all crimes, and and death is different.
But the analogy is still appreciable. So.
Yeah, the losses, and I'm almost apologizing because I dealt with so many homicide families that I don't want to feel like what I'm saying is disrespecting or downplaying the victimization that they suffer. But you know what? These days, if our personal identifying information is compromised, is put into the public stream by Musk and company, the damage that can be done with that kind of information is incalculable.
Glenn, do you presume that, look, yes, we're having some success with these temporary restraining orders and these preliminary injunctions, but that ultimately the law is enough on the side so as to prevent these people from gaining access to our PII, to our Social Security Administration, to our banking information? Like, do we have enough of a bulwark in the law to prevent these folks who, let's be honest here, have been deputized by Trump, have been granted access by Trump, who kind of have what they need from the executive branch to be able to at least start this process to get in there? Is there enough of a bulwark here in the law?
I am not confident that there are sufficient guardrails, safety checks, firewalls in place to prevent the damage that Musk and company can accomplish if they are willing to, for example, ignore, violate, try to find workarounds for court orders like preliminary injunctions or restraining orders. And what I will say is wrongdoers are going to do wrong. And let's hope that, the Elon Musks of the world have some concern for intentionally violating court orders, which could easily land him in contempt, civil contempt, and if things are really bad, criminal contempt.
If he is found in criminal contempt, for example, isn't it up to the DOJ to be able to prosecute something like that? Like, if he is committing federal crimes, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but wouldn't the sole people who have the ability to prosecute those be emanating from the federal government, the DOJ? And of course, Donald Trump is not going to let his own DOJ prosecute Elon Musk.
Yeah, usually federal criminal prosecutions have to be brought by federal prosecutors. But when court orders are violated and a judge believes that criminal contempt needs to be pursued, there are vehicles for the court to be able to use its own power to hold somebody in contempt of court orders, even if there is, lots of resistance or no appetite at all for the Department of Justice to do that. There are some procedural vehicles that a court can use to make sure that its power, its court orders are not entirely dependent on the whims of the executive branch. So, there are some, for example, the U.S. Marshals. They, under our federal laws, are legally required to carry out federal court orders. So even though the U.S. Marshals are part of the Department of Justice, the executive branch, there are some legal obligations that help courts enforce their own orders.
Okay, well, look, this is something that we're obviously going to keep a close eye on because I think everybody in this entire country, left, right, and center, has a vested interest in making sure that our personally identifiable information, our banking information, any information in the Treasury, all of that is kept secure, kept away from Elon Musk, who has personal vendettas against anybody whose political ideology doesn't comport with his, kept away from these 19 and 20-year-old kids who again, have gotten into trouble. One of them got into trouble for leaking sensitive information for the company that he worked at previously. So these aren't exactly people who we should trust with our personal information. And again, this is something that goes beyond the realm of politics. I think that anybody anywhere on the political spectrum, whether you're a far-right Republican or, a radical leftist, doesn't want their PII being leaked. So, again, we will keep a close eye on this. For everybody watching right now, if you want to follow along, please make sure to subscribe. The links to both of our channels are right here on this screen. That's also the best way to support our work. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
And I'm Glenn Kirshner.
You're watching The Legal Breakdown.